Landlords are upset after more cities pass pay-to-stay laws, which would allow tenants to pay the past rent that was due in order to not be evicted. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over these pay-to-stay laws, right? Now, the first time I heard about this was, I believe it was Cleveland, Ohio, where they decided they were going to try to pass one of these pay-to-stay laws, which would allow tenants to pay the back rent that they owe to the landlord and then not be evicted. Okay, so if the tenant pays that back rent, then they won't be evicted. The problem is, right, that a lot of the times, just because they're able to pay the amount that they owed already doesn't mean the landlord doesn't still want them out of there, because maybe they won't have any ability to pay going forward into the future. Maybe they just want to get rid of that tenant and get a tenant in there who is actually responsible and willing to pay them on time and the amount that is actually owed all the time. You know, whatever the reason, the landlord should have the right to say, no more. I'm already, ready to get rid of you, and you cannot stay here anymore, regardless of if you pay me the money I owe back. Because in my opinion, the tenant should still have to pay that money back, regardless of whether they've got to go or not. It should be up to the landlord, though, to make that decision, not the city, not these ridiculous laws. You know, they create these laws in order to, we're going to help these people out. It's going to stop evictions. It's going to prevent people from getting removed. But believe me when I say that most landlords are willing to work with people if they are doing the right thing. Now, when people aren't doing the right thing and they're trying to screw the landlord over, we just want them out of our properties, okay? And that is the reason why I don't agree with this pay-to-stay law. On top of that, a lot of things aren't considered. Keep in mind that if a landlord files eviction, and this is me personally, when I filed eviction, I had to pay attorneys, okay? And those attorneys weren't cheap. So the only thing that the tenant is doing is paying the back rent that's owed. They're not paying me my attorney fees to get rid of them. So I'm still out, however much money I spent on attorneys and on, court costs, etc. And the tenant gets to just stay there, and the only thing they're out is the money that they already owed me. So this is ridiculous. And on top of that, if they can't pay going forward, maybe I just want them people out of there. Well, it's absolutely crazy. But before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think these pay-to-stay laws are a good thing or a bad thing? Do you think these work better for the landlord or worse for the landlord? You know my opinion. I don't like government intervention into my business. I don't think that when the government puts their hand in anything, that it turns out being better. If the landlord, in most cases, is willing to work with the tenant and allow them to stay if they are paid the money that is owed to them, then that is already a success. It doesn't make sense. We didn't need a law that says, hey, the landlords have to do something that they're already doing. The only thing you're doing is punishing the good landlords who get caught up in a bad situation. And that's what I don't like. But anyway, let's get into this article. So this article is coming from the AthensMessenger.com, and Athens is in Ohio. Don't think it's Athens, Georgia. And it says, Athens City Council tables tenants' right to pay to stay ordinance to get more public input. And let's see what the article says. Athens City Council wants to listen to more members of the public before the tenants' right to pay to stay ordinance goes on the record books. The ordinance was passed on third reading during the September 6th meeting, but several city residents and council members questioned the measure's legality and whether it was needed during Monday's regular meeting. Introduced by Council Member Ben Ziff, the ordinance will allow tenants to stay if they can pay the total amount of past due rent, court costs, and reasonable lawyer fees, as previous reported in the Messenger. So yeah, they say that the tenant would have to pay the court costs and reasonable lawyer fees, but how much lawyer fees are we talking about here? And I think that's the point that a lot of landlords are making. Hey, the reasonable lawyer fees that the government believes are out there, they're actually way less than what most landlords are paying. Rusty Rittenhouse, an attorney at Lavelle and Associates Trail Lawyers, said he saw several problems with the ordinance. City Council has received several emails from him on the proposed change to the Athens Code. Most landlords operated as corporations, LLCs, trusts, partnerships, etc., to limit the owner's personal responsibility. As businesses, they can't represent themselves in court and must hire legal representation. Companies can easily rack up $1,000 or more in legal fees for an eviction, Rittenhouse said. The ordinance lists reasonable lawyer fees as $150. So yeah, the tenant would only have to come up with $150 for lawyer fees when, hey, it's costing me $1,000 every time I do an eviction. So guess what? You're still out $850, and you have to keep this tenant in there who possibly won't be able to pay going into the future. Sounds like a bad deal to me. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't think that this is a good idea. And this lawyer here, he made a great point, and I'm glad that they actually consulted with somebody who knew what they were talking about. He also had issue with the enforceability of the ordinance. I've been practicing law a long time. You may recall that there were several eviction moratoriums that went in place during the pandemic, and it was confusing, Rittenhouse said. It was very common for me to go to court and encounter a tenant who had misunderstood the law. They thought they didn't have to pay rent, so they stopped paying rent. There were actual requirements of the moratorium. When they went to court, they got an unexpected surprise that they owed rent. I don't want to see that happen. And yeah, that's another thing, right? They passed this law and it could easily confuse the tenants into believing, oh, well, I can't be evicted as long as I come up with the money, at the very end, right? So this could easily cause tenants to, start paying late, not pay a landlord until they're actually in eviction court. It could be bad for the landlord's finances. And you're just making it easier for these tenants who are trying to bend the rules or break the rules to screw a landlord over. And I don't like that. The ordinance forces a landlord to accept the tenant's payment. In order for an eviction to proceed, the court has to have jurisdiction, he said. If after the eviction notice the landlord accepts any payment, it invalidated the eviction notice and thereby the court jurisdiction. It is simply beyond the powers that you have. Several organizations such as Hocking Athens, Perry Community Action, Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, churches, and other nonprofits offer funds to help people pay rent. Councilmember Solveig Sejeldness, every one of these articles has somebody's name I can't pronounce, so forgive me, read a message from Lucy Schwally, managing attorney with Southeastern Ohio Legal Services. I know landlords that I know in the community that I know are responsible people, Sejeldness said. They have said that this won't affect them at all because it is so rarely even comes up, because they make a practice of working with their tenants to make sure that they stay housed. And that is the truth, okay? This isn't a major problem, but when it does become a problem, it will be one that really hurts the landlords that are involved, okay? And that is what I don't like seeing. When the landlords are already doing everything that they can to help these tenants out. 99% of landlords are doing a great job. They are listening to their tenants. They're working with them. They're being respectful. They're fixing all the repairs and problems. But the government, what they do is they step in, right? And they make these new laws to try to fix this problem that's created by a very, very small number of landlords, the 1% who are not doing things like they're supposed to be doing, right? And instead of getting that 1% and punishing them, they punish the other 99% because now the 99% has to jump through all these additional hoops and follow all these additional laws, and they incur all these additional costs involved, okay? So this is why I am so against, just all these ridiculous landlord rules and landlord regulations that all these jurisdictions keep passing. And, this is coming out of Ohio. Ohio is known as being a very landlord-friendly state. So it shouldn't surprise you if you see something like this coming out in states that you traditionally think of as not being super tenant-friendly, okay? During the meeting, both Ziff and Councilmember Alan Swank asked that the ordinance be tabled until other members of the public had a chance to speak. Swank said he preferred to have a judge and landlord speak before council. It was unknown when the ordinance would become would come before council again, as the community members would have to be scheduled to attend a meeting. Also, during the meeting, council approved the first reading of an ordinance that will allow the city to purchase. That's not important. Okay, that's other little small town talk. But anyway, the important thing is they tabled the ordinance for now. And if you're a landlord up in a city where they're trying to pass this pay to stay stuff, I want you to fight it. Okay. Any ordinance where you think, oh, well, this won't be bad for us, we can deal with it. It starts off as this little small thing, and then next thing you know, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you're sitting in California where you don't have the right to evict tenants, you don't have the right to control how much you charge for rent, and you're under the thumb of this government that's more oppressive than anything else.